The best cold calling openers for breaking the ice. Cold calling isn't dead, your opener just has to be better. Cold calling still works in B2B, but it's far less forgiving than it used to be. When the average booked meeting rate is only 2.3%, your opener isn't a formality. It's the lever that determines whether you earn the next 20 seconds or get bounced. That's why teams that treat the first line like a small detail end up with small pipelines. The phone is also not going away. HubSpot reports 68% of sales pros work in organizations that still use cold calling, and 63% of frequent cold callers say their call volume increased year over year. In other words, competition for attention is rising, and the bar for sounding credible and relevant is rising with it. In this guide, we'll break down the best cold calling openers for breaking the ice, how to deliver them without sounding scripted, and how to coach your team to make them consistent. If you're evaluating cold calling services, building an in-house SDR function, or partnering with a cold calling agency, these principles apply the same way. The first sentence sets the trajectory for everything that follows. Why the first 30 seconds decide the outcome. Cold calls don't fail in minute 3, they fail in second 8. One dataset summarized by Zipdo suggests prospects make a keep or hang up decision in roughly 8 seconds, and about 82% will hang up if they're not interested within the first 30 seconds. That reality forces a mindset shift. Your opener is not getting through the intro, it's earning permission to ask a single good question. The math is what makes this painful. At an average success rate of 2.3%, you're basically converting about 1 in 43 real conversations into a meeting. So tiny gains compound fast. If your opener lifts performance even a couple of points, that can mean materially more pipeline without increasing dials. And the channel itself is still productive when executed well. Cognism summarizes research showing about 82% of buyers at least occasionally accept meetings from sellers who reach out cold. And some organizations attribute roughly 51% of leads to cold calling. The takeaway is simple. Buyers aren't allergic to calls. They're allergic to irrelevant, low-confidence openings. The opener structure that wins in B2B. Across the highest performing teams we see, and across large datasets, the most reliable B2B framework is straightforward. A clear intro, a quick pattern interrupt, and then a direct purpose statement. When your SDRs can consistently hit those beats, your cold calling team stops winging it and starts controlling the first moments of the conversation. The pattern interrupt is the small conversational move that breaks the prospect's auto-reject script. It's not a gimmick, it's a psychological reset that turns unknown number into human speaking to me, just long enough for you to add context. The most important constraint is speed. You want to sound natural, then immediately earn relevance. That's why stating the purpose early is so powerful. Gong found that calls where reps explicitly say, "The reason for my call is," are about 2.1 times more successful than calls that never clearly explain why they're calling. In practice, this is confidence plus clarity. Who you are, why you're calling, and what problem you're anchored to, without drifting into a product monologue. Openers that outperform, and the one to stop using. If you want a data-backed pattern interrupt that consistently outperforms, start simple. Gong's research shows that opening with "How have you been?" lifts success rates to about 10.01% versus a 1.5% baseline, roughly a 6.6 times improvement. It works because it sounds like a normal human question, then gives you a short window to follow with a crisp reason for calling line. Once you bought that window, the best reason for my call lines are anchored in something specific: a hiring spike, a tool rollout, a funding event, or a clear role-based problem you can credibly speak to. This is where great targeting meets great talk tracks, and it's exactly the kind of operational discipline strong SDR agencies and outbound sales agency teams build into their playbooks. The permission-based opener is the one we recommend removing from most B2B cold calling scripts. Did I catch you at a bad time? Sounds polite, but the numbers are brutal. It's associated with roughly 0.9% success and makes you about 40% less likely to book a meeting. A better alternative is respectful confidence. Acknowledge the interruption. I know this is out of the blue. I'll be brief. And then immediately state the reason for your call. A great opener doesn't persuade someone to buy. It earns you the next 20 seconds to prove the call is worth their attention. Delivery beats memorization. How to make openers land. Even the best opener fails when it's rushed, apologetic, or obviously read. We coach reps to slow down slightly, smile while speaking, and pause after the opener so the prospect can respond. Because talking over people is one of the fastest ways to trigger hang-ups in that first 30 seconds. The goal is confident and brief, not hyper-energized and fast. A practical coaching routine is to review call recordings and only score the first 45 seconds. Listen for micro behaviors. Do they clearly say their name and company? Do they land the pattern interrupt naturally? And do they get to the purpose without rambling? That level of focus turns cold calling from an art into a repeatable system, especially if you're managing an outsourced sales team or scaling a sales development agency function. Consistency matters because the average baseline is unforgiving. When the market average sits around 2.3%, a rep who reliably executes a proven opener is not slightly better, they can be dramatically better. That's also why we recommend frameworks over word-for-word scripts. Structure keeps quality high while still letting cold callers sound like themselves. Common opener mistakes that quietly kill meetings. The most common mistake is starting with permission-based or apologetic language. It positions the rep as low status and gives the prospect an easy no, which is the opposite of what you want when decisions happen in roughly 8 seconds. You can still be respectful without asking for permission to exist. Be direct, be brief, and move immediately into relevance. The second mistake is launching into a product explanation in the first breath. Prospects don't need a mini demo. They need a reason to believe the call is about them, not about your features. Train reps to earn a conversation first by stating a clear reason for the call and then asking a tight, easy-to-answer question that confirms or denies fit. The third mistake is treating every persona the same and never measuring what works. An executive needs outcomes and context fast. A manager may respond better to operational pain and quick examples, but both need clarity. If you don't track call-to-meeting conversion by opener variant, you'll keep guessing. And in a world where bad time openers hover near 0.9%, guessing gets expensive. How to test, personalize, and align phone with multi-channel outbound. Testing is where most teams derail. They change 10 things at once and learn nothing. Instead, run a simple A/B test with 2 opener frameworks for a few hundred connects, and judge the winner by connect-to-meeting conversion, not by it felt good. This is how high-performing cold calling companies and disciplined B2B sales agency teams build an improvement loop that actually compounds. Personalization doesn't have to be deep research. It just has to be specific and true. Anchoring your reason for calling in a trigger, hiring, a tool rollout, a new market, a relevant initiative, is often enough to turn the call from random interruption into timely context. When you pair that with the reason for my call is language that gong ties to 2.1x better outcomes, You get a scalable recipe instead of a lucky script. Multi-channel alignment makes the phone feel expected. If your team also runs email and LinkedIn sequences, whether in-house or through a cold email agency, have the rep reference the last touch in the opener so the call sounds like a continuation. That single sentence of context reduces friction, builds legitimacy, and helps your B2B cold calling services perform like a coordinated outbound program rather than isolated dials. Building a repeatable opener system, and what to do next. At SalesHive, we've learned that the best opener is less a single line and more a system, a standard framework, persona variations, coaching on delivery, and ongoing testing. That approach is how we've booked over 117,000 meetings for more than 1,500 B2B clients since 2016, by treating openers as a measurable lever, not a creative writing exercise. It's also why sales outsourcing can work exceptionally well when the process is disciplined and the feedback loop is tight. If you're implementing this internally, start by standardizing one proven opener structure, then create a small set of persona-specific reason for my call lines that your reps can deliver naturally. Build weekly call reviews that focus only on the first 45 seconds and keep your measurements simple. Which opener version leads to more meetings? When you do this consistently, you stop debating scripts and start scaling what performs. If you're considering a cold calling agency or an SDR agency to accelerate pipeline, evaluate them on how they test and coach openers, not just how many dials they promise. The phone still produces outcomes when done well, and the market data supports it. Average teams sit around 2.3%, but strong execution can materially change that trajectory. Your next step is to treat the opener like a product. Design it, train it, measure it, and iterate it.